the summer of 1975, the Jackson 5, one of the most successful family acts in American pop history, announced they were leaving Motown Records, the label that had discovered them, groomed them, and turned five brothers from Gary, Indiana into global superstars. Michael, Jackie, Tito, and Marlon Jackson signed with Epic Records, a CBS Records imprint, chasing greater creative control and better royalties. But one brother did not go with them. Jermaine Jackson, the group's co-lead singer and second oldest brother, chose to remain at Motown as a solo artist, a decision that fractured the group, strained the family, and took nearly a decade to fully heal. This paper examines why Jermaine stayed, how his father Joseph and his siblings reacted, the toll it took on the group, and how the Jacksons eventually reunited. Why the Jackson 5 left Motown. By the mid-1970s, the Jackson 5's commercial momentum had begun to slow, and the brothers, pushed largely by their father and manager, Joseph Jackson, had grown frustrated with Motown's refusal to let them write, produce, or have creative input on their own records. Motown founder Berry Gordy ran a tightly controlled hit factory system, and the brothers wanted more autonomy and a larger share of the profits their music generated. Joseph negotiated a new deal with CBS Records that offered substantially better terms, and the brothers agreed to make the jump, officially departing when their Motown contract expired in March 1976. Because Motown legally owned the trademark Jackson 5, the group had to rebrand simply as the Jacksons once they arrived at Epic. Jermaine's stated reasons for staying. Jermaine's decision not to follow his brothers is usually explained by two intertwined factors, one personal and one relational. The most commonly cited reason is his marriage. In 1973, Jermaine had married Hazel Joy Gordy, the daughter of Motown's founder. That relationship connected Jermaine directly to Motown's first family, and biographers and fan historians alike have pointed to it as a central factor in his decision to stay loyal to the label his father-in-law built. Multiple retrospectives frame the marriage as the practical explanation fans and press reached for at the time. Jermaine himself, however, pushed back on the idea that the marriage alone explains his choice. In interviews tied to the family's A&E Jacksons, a family dynasty documentary, he said his decision to remain at Motown had less to do with Hazel and more to do with how the move was communicated to him. He felt the decision to leave had been made without him, presented to him as something already settled rather than something the brothers had worked through together. In his 2011 memoir, You Are Not Alone, Michael Through a Brother's Eyes, Jermaine described the specific moment. His father, Joseph, called him and instructed him to come to a meeting without Hazel and sign the new CBS contract. Jermaine refused to sign. He later wrote pointedly that there was a suggestion for years that I broke up the group by leaving, but I've never viewed it that way. I did not leave them. They left me. In his account, loyalty, both to Gordy, who had signed the brothers as children and treated them like family, and to his own marriage, outweighed the pull to follow his brothers into an uncertain new deal. How Joseph and his siblings took it. Joseph Jackson reacted with anger and a sense of betrayal. Having spent months negotiating the CBS deal, he expected all five sons to make the jump together, and Jermaine's refusal to sign was, in Jermaine's own retelling, treated as a direct defiance of his father's authority, an especially loaded conflict given how domineering Joseph was known to be within the family. The rift extended beyond a single phone call. Jermaine wrote that he wanted to speak with Michael directly afterward but held back because of the tension that had built between him and his brothers during this period. The brothers, for their part, were reportedly shocked. The Jackson 5 had been an unusually tight-knit unit. The brothers had shared bedrooms, tour buses, and dressing rooms since childhood, and Jermaine himself had called their shared bunk bedroom in Gary their first dressing room. Michael Jackson later wrote in his own memoir, Moonwalk, that he vividly remembered the pain of performing the first show without Jermaine standing at his side, where Jermaine had always played bass beside him since their earliest living room rehearsals. Jermaine has described the aftermath as one of the hardest periods of his life. He recalled the sense of detachment and loneliness as profound, saying it did not feel like losing a limb, but every limb, because the brotherhood was so intrinsic to his identity. Hazel Gordy has recalled his sadness during this period as something close to depression, one no one in the family could pull him out of. Adding to the isolation, Jermaine found that Jackson 5 fans turned on him too. Some refused his autograph and accused him of betraying his brothers by staying behind, a rejection that stung especially hard after years of unconditional adoration from the same fan base. That loneliness later became creative material. Jermaine has said his song Lonely Won't Leave Me Alone was directly inspired by the isolation of that period. The effect on the group. The practical effect was immediate. Randy Jackson, the youngest brother, took Jermaine's place both on stage and in the studio, and the group's Motown-owned name went with the label, forcing the rebrand to The Jacksons. Musically, the split also became a turning point for the brothers who left freed from Motown's hit factory constraints. They gradually took over their own writing and production, work that flowered on 1978's Destiny and 1980's Triumph, and set the stage for Michael's solo breakthroughs with Quincy Jones. Jermaine, meanwhile, built his own solo career at Motown, releasing a largely self-written and self-produced album in 1977 and moving into production work for other Motown acts. For nearly a decade, two branches of the same family effectively worked as competitors under different corporate banners, with the media at times framing Michael and Jermaine's parallel solo careers as a rivalry, something both brothers later said misrepresented their actual relationship. How they finally overcame it. The reconciliation came through Motown itself. In 1983, Berry Gordy organized Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever, a television special celebrating the label's history, and asked the Jacksons to reunite for a performance, the same broadcast on which Michael famously debuted the moonwalk during his solo performance of Billie Jean. Jermaine rejoined his brothers on that stage after 9 years apart, and the emotional success of the reunion convinced all six brothers to record together for the first time since 1975. That collaboration became Victory, released in July 1984 on Epic, the only studio album ever to feature all six Jackson brothers, and the last the group made with Michael. The album was largely a collection of solo tracks rather than a fully collaborative effort, but Jermaine and Michael did share co-lead vocals on the hit single Torture, a part originally intended for Jackie before Jermaine's return. The accompanying Victory Tour, which ran from July to December 1984 across 55 stadium shows to roughly 2.5 million fans, marked the only time all six brothers ever toured together, closing the loop on a family rift that had opened nearly a decade earlier. Michael and Marlon left the group after that tour, but Jermaine remained with Tito, Jackie, and Randy for one final album, 1989's 2300 Jackson Street, bringing his own Jackson's chapter to a close on terms of reunion rather than estrangement. Jermaine Jackson didn't break up the Jackson 5 by staying at Motown. He simply refused to let anyone, not even his own father, tell him where his loyalty belonged. Let's keep it real on the comments section and make it a conversation.